It was the 15th of July, 2019. In the afternoon, amidst bad weather, a flight in India was about to depart from Mumbai heading to Delhi. Weather in Delhi, heavy rain and extreme storms. But the forecast said it would be clear by the time the flight would arrive. Even during the journey, lightning cracked across the cockpit window. The turbulence shook the plane's controls. And upon reaching Delhi, when the pilots looked into a blur of rain and cloud, there's no runway in sight. Below them, they could only see a flooded airport, and around them, the sky was jammed with planes waiting for clearance. They'd already circled the airport 3 times, fuel was nearly gone. And now the backup airport was also out of range. If they couldn't find a place to land in the next few minutes, 161 people wouldn't make it out alive. This is the real story of Vistara Flight 944, a breathtaking roller coaster ride that stared disaster in the face, packed with more twists than you would imagine. This crisis started 3 hours earlier in Mumbai, India. It's monsoon season. The morning sky is a heavy sheet of gray. Rain pours relentlessly, flooding the tarmac. At Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport, flights are delayed. Only at Gate 23, 155 passengers are boarding Vistara Flight 944 that's heading to New Delhi. It's just a short 2-hour flight, but on the other side, Delhi isn't ready either. Since 5 in the morning, the capital of India has also been drenched in heavy rain. Besides, a violent storm has parked itself over the city. With blinding rain, low clouds, and thunder shaking the glass control towers, visibility is near zero. Plus, the runway is soaked. Already several flights are circling overhead waiting for a chance to land. So Delhi Airport is technically locked down, but Flight 944 doesn't know that yet. Instead, it was ready to take off with the captain, who's just 30, but he's flown this aircraft for more than 8,000 hours. His co-pilot, just 28, is also sharp but still gaining experience with just 1,600 hours total. Besides, the airline behind them, Vistara, is one of India's youngest and a joint venture between Tata and Singapore Airlines. Vistara had everything sorted except one pressure: economics. For them, flying felt expensive. Every extra kilo of fuel adds weight, and more weight means more fuel burn. So they make sure the engines are noise-free and fuel-efficient, like the one in this Vistara flight. Plus, many airlines avoid overfilling. They provide fuel just enough to get there, hold a bit, and maybe divert to the nearest airport if needed. Why? Because in aviation, what eats up nearly a third of the airline's costs is fuel. Every extra kilo carried means more weight. More weight means more fuel burned, so crews don't load fuel with generosity, but with precision, like surgeons calculating how much blood a patient can lose without flatlining. For this flight to Delhi, the crew prepares a surgical recipe: 500 kilos for taxiing, 4,000 kilos for the main flight, 200 kilos just in case things go slightly wrong. See, they were only ready for things going off track, but slightly. Now 1,150 kilos on paper is enough to circle the sky for 30 minutes if needed. And they carry an extra 101 kilos in internal Vistara buffer. But what I've told you so far is just half the story. Now there's a villain in this story called alternate fuel. It's the fuel to get you to a second airport if your first landing attempt fails. And on good weather days, you need to list just one alternative. But on bad weather days, you need to have 2 alternatives in hand. Meanwhile, today's weather was absolutely bad. So the briefing lists 2 backup airports, Lucknow and Ahmedabad. And by regulation, pilots must load enough fuel to reach the farthest one, which is Ahmedabad. That means 3,800 more kilos of fuel. That's a lot of weight, a lot of money, and possibly a lot of unnecessary burden if the weather improves. So the pilots check the weather again. And for some moment, it seems like luck is on their side. The storm in Delhi is moving northeast. It's supposed to clear by the time they arrive. Besides Lucknow, the closer alternate is showing clear skies, so the pilots make a decision. They program Lucknow as the alternate in the flight computer. And they list Jaipur as a secondary fallback, as both are closer than Ahmedabad. So less fuel is required, which means less weight and better efficiency. But here is the funny problem. The official pre-flight paperwork still names Ahmedabad as the alternate. And that means legally they must carry enough fuel to get there. So how do they make it all fit? At that point, 101 kilo internal buffer, which is Vistara's own little cushion, becomes the secret patch. Simply put, on paper, it looks airtight, but in reality, they're betting everything that the weather clears in Delhi, that Lucknow stays safe, and that nothing unexpected happens mid-air. But on this day, nothing will go according to the plan. At exactly 3:10 in the afternoon, the aircraft pushed back from gate 23, and every minute sitting there ticked fuel away. By the time they reached the edge of the runway, they'd already burned 225 kilos. At 3:18, clearance came, and the pilots advanced the throttles. The engines roared, tires hissed against the damp concrete, and Vistara 944 lifted. The moment they take off, rain covers the windows and there's no view outside, only gray. Fuel remaining at that time was 8,274 kilos. By 4:20, the Airbus was about 150 kilometers away from Delhi. The crew called in for the latest weather update, still confident they'd find the clear skies promised in the earlier Mumbai forecast. The same forecast they used to justify cutting nearly 2 tons of fuel. But the skies over Delhi weren't clearing, they were collapsing. Visibility had dropped to just 500 meters, and landing was nearly impossible. And then came the instruction no pilot wants to hear with falling fuel. Hold. Delhi ATC was overwhelmed with a long queue of aircraft ahead of them. And in an hour, Flight 944 also joined the queue. The captain halted the aircraft gently, slipping them into a holding pattern, a slow, looping flight path in the sky. It's like being told to circle a storm drain while your gas tank leaks 1 drop at a time. Fuel left was 5,200 kilos. The captain did the math. They could circle for 30 minutes, maximum. Each minute in the sky means burning 55 kilos of fuel, and each full turn through the hold cost 6 minutes. Still, they circled. So after the first loop, 4,900 kilos of fuel were left. After the second loop, it was 4,600. And at the end of the third loop, 4,300. Meanwhile, the radio kept lying. Just 5 more minutes. But when 5 minutes had passed, then another 5 and another, and that way 20 minutes were gone. And Delhi still won't give them clearance, and the captain realized what was happening, and they couldn't land yet, and they couldn't leave either. Fuel was waiting for no one, so they had to take an immediate decision which would either save lives or seal their fate. The fuel level was close to 3,500 kilograms. For a flight, that's the line. Drop below this and they can't even make it to their backup airport. So it's time to get out. But the captain said nothing. Ahmedabad, their alternate airport on paper, was now too far. That chance seriously died while they circled. Another airport, Jaipur, was also stormy. And Lucknow? It also became stormy, but at least within reach. Finally, at 4:55 p.m., the captain decided to divert and head for the alternate airport. And suddenly, Delhi ATC called in. 40 miles to touchdown. Confirm acceptable. The captain had to do some quick math here. 40 miles means 15 minutes. That's enough, but only if nothing goes wrong. One missed approach in landing, and they won't have the fuel to go around or reach anywhere else. So he sets a hard line. I'm not landing here with less than 3.5 tons. Actually, it's a rule, too. The second they hit 3,500 kilos, they leave. No delay. So ATC cleared them for approach. Vistara 944, descend to flight level 60. And just then, it happens. Fuel drops to exactly 3,500. It's the red zone. Technically, they're supposed to divert right away without wasting a single moment. But see the situation here. Delhi was temptingly close. Just 15 minutes and they could be on the ground. But if they try and somehow the landing fails, it will be over. So do they risk it all for one shot at Delhi? And what they do next decides everything. The fuel gauge blinked. 3,480 kilograms. The captain knew that now. It's not just low, it's dangerous. They're already below the minimum needed to reach Lucknow, but Delhi's weather was still awful. Rain was hammering the windshield. Wind was slamming the fuselage. In this weather, chances are high that the first attempt of landing would fail. Still, he makes the call, go for Delhi, so they lined up for the final approach with only 3,200 kilos of fuel left. It had its wheels down seconds from touchdown, no room for error. But then it happened. A sudden gust of wind came from behind and hit the tail. It's called a tailwind. The aircraft jerked. The captain pulled out instinctively and said, "Delhi Tower, Vistara 944 going around, runway 29. The time 5:20 p.m. One attempt was gone, and now they don't have the fuel to try again. With no choice in hand, they were forced to switch their course to Lucknow. But the problem was that fuel on board was only 2,850 kilos. This was not enough for go-around and for reaching Lucknow. It will be a race against fuel. So ATC offered a shortcut, Aligarh, but it was still unreachable due to weather conditions. So finally they had to turn south to avoid the storm, straight toward Agra's restricted military zone. It was also 40 miles away that they couldn't afford. Meanwhile, due to the weight, fuel dropped to 2,000 kilos. It was kind of flirting with a guaranteed danger. And at that moment, ATC said, "Vistara 944, any interest in Jaipur, sir?" It's clear. Turns out Jaipur was not only close, but also safe as per weather conditions. It had a fully visible runway. Plus, it's even on the flight plan. But to everyone's surprise, the crew rejected it, saying that Lucknow is their alternate. But why? Because Jaipur had no Vistara crew in the ground team. So now you see the twist. Jaipur was just a name on paper to reduce fuel load and cut costs. In reality, it was just a sham. Now, with Jaipur just 20 minutes away and the skies ahead full of thunderclouds, they chose Lucknow. And during all these chit-chat with ATC, fuel was already down to 1,500 kilos, dangerously low. They straight away headed for Lucknow. Luckily, there was no delay in Lucknow airport, but the weather radar screamed otherwise. A giant storm blocked their only path to the runway. And now they're trapped again. They're too far from Delhi, too low on fuel for Jaipur. Lucknow's their only hope, and it's buried in a storm. What happens next will push this crew past every limit. They had no other choice apart from landing in Lucknow. Rain slammed into the cockpit windows, lightning burst all around. The aircraft shuddered violently in the wind. Vistara Flight 944 began descending, straight into hell. Visibility was only 475, that's below their legal minimum. Landing here was next to impossible, but they kept going because what else could they do? Even the captain regretted once, "We should have taken a chance in Delhi," because it was a completely blind descending, hoping for a miracle. When they came to 500 feet, still they saw no runway. Meanwhile, another 250 kilos were gone. Then comes the mistake. Instead of climbing to save fuel, the captain kept the plane low, circling tight, chasing another landing chance. The result? It backfired. Fuel burned even faster, down to only 1,100 kilos, which is the buffer fuel for Vistara flights. The warning light blinked, requesting priority landing. But the weather was so bad that trying to land in Lucknow was the same as heading to a crash. How about other airports? Kanpur was close, but Kanpur had no landing systems. Plus, there were storms en route. Prayagraj farther, but better equipped. Except it's not in the system. They had no charts or layout for Prayagraj Airport yet. Meanwhile, just 650 kilos of fuel were left. That means they could afford only 15 minutes of flight. Max. The captain's hands were so tied that he had to call, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! We need to land immediately. Lucknow is below minima, diverting to Prayagraj." But Prayagraj was roughly 20 minutes away, and they'll run dry at 15. So they did the math. They would have to fly 5 minutes with no power, engines dead, all the systems failing, and a 65-ton glider falling through a thunderstorm. Just 5 minutes between life and death. The captain gripped the yoke and the first officer watched the fuel gauge, but suddenly, like a miracle, Lucknow reported visibility. 600 meters, which means landing is still not safe, but possible. Barely. The captain had only a fraction of a second to think. Lucknow was 37 miles behind them. Prayagraj was 58 miles ahead. Fuel remaining? 550 kilos. That gives them around 11 minutes before the engines quit for good. And within a moment, the voice crackled through the radio again. "Lucknow visibility is now 1,000 meters. If you wish, you may turn back now, sir." 1,000 meters is actually good news. Without a moment's pause, the captain said, "Lucknow Mayday 944. We are returning to Lucknow." The aircraft made a hard turn, carving a precise arc through the storm. There was a fierce crosswind, but they were out of time to care. Because fuel? Only 440 kilos with roughly 8 minutes of flight time left. The aircraft immediately locked onto the Instrument Landing System, or ILS. That's like an invisible path painted in the sky, guiding them toward the runway. Still, at 6,000 feet, turbulence hit them like a punch. The captain could barely keep the aircraft steady. At 4,000 feet, they had only 420 kilos. By that time, they should have seen the runway soon. They had to. At 3,000 feet, they still saw nothing but rain. At 2,000, fuel lights screamed red. Then at 1,500 feet, finally, a flicker was seen through the storm. Runway lights. 4 more minutes to touchdown. Fuel 400 kilos. Maybe, just maybe, it'll be enough. The captain disconnected the autopilot, because this landing will have to be by hand. Meanwhile, lightning flashed to their left. At 300 feet, the runway was in sight. Flooded, glistening, dangerous, but at least visible. At 200, the fuel level was just 330 kilos, which means if this landing failed, there's no chance for a second try. At 100 feet, a massive gust of wind forced the plane toward the runway's edge. The captain gripped the controls like his life depended on it. And honestly, it did. Finally, they had a successful touchdown in Lucknow at 6:48 in the evening. Fuel remaining was only 260 kilos, which could buy then only 5 minutes of flight time. That's what separated 161 souls from a tragic headline. However, after this terrifying flight, both pilots were pulled off duty, a routine move as investigators combed through the data. And 1 week later, they were cleared. There were no errors and no violations. Because indeed, they had done everything right. They followed the book, they trusted the system, but it was the system that nearly brought them down. See, this wasn't a mistake. This was the result of pressure to stay on schedule, insincere forecasts, inflexible rules, and ruthless cost-cutting over safety, converging in the worst possible way. And it was nothing but a miracle that they still made it. Tell us in the comments, what do you think about it? Upon hearing all the accounts, who do you put the blame on? Let me know in the comments.